In this week's episode of Life on Board AmyJo, we finally say farewell to Audlem. This is Audlem bottom locks we're in, and this lovely little garden here is full of stuff. And we find the hack green locks have a dark history. And is the secret bunker museum all it seems? It's now time to leave Audlem, and we just have 3 locks to descend to complete the flight of locks here. Below this lock are visitor moorings on the right hand side with the water tap, and on the left they are long-term moorings.
Watch me crash now.
This is Audlem bottom locks we're in, and this lovely little garden here is full of stuff for the boaters to help themselves. What a lovely idea. It goes all the way along past the little hut down the other side. Now there's obviously not a lot in it at the moment because it's spring, but I dare say in later summer I can see onions, I can see beetroot, I can see a few other bits and pieces, and there's still room to plant some more yet. Having exited the bottom lock at Audlem, we called into Overwater Marina for a pump out, and then continued our cruise up the Shropshire Union for about an hour and a half, and we arrived at Hack Green Newt Secret Bunker. We moored up here and had a little tour around the bunker. These 2 locks here at Hack Green and the surrounding land were acquired by the Ministry of Defence at the start of World War II. Here they developed a radar station intended to protect the strategic ports of Liverpool and Manchester. RAF Hack Green, a ground control interceptor station, was established in 1940, and most of the service staff were billeted in Nantwich. The Brinesbath Hotel in the town of Nantwich was requisitioned, and servicemen and women who stayed there made their way to the radar station by road or by canal, tying up at the locks. RAF Hack Green even had its own railway station. At the end of the conflict, the facility was converted to a Cold War role as part of the countrywide ROTOR Rota network of radar stations, protecting the UK airspace against Soviet bomber and missile attack. In the 1960s, RAF Hack Green became Mersey Radar Northern Sector, again ensuring the safety of both military and civilian aircraft flying over Cheshire. The radar station actually closed in 1966. In 1983, the facility was totally rebuilt at a cost of $32 million and became the regional seat of government to be used at the time of nuclear war. However, just 9 years later, the changing world situation led to its closure. Well, we're now inside the not so secret bunker. And this is the entrance foyer where you come in.
Let's take in.
Yeah.
Stop.
So that bomb there, the green one, is a thermonuclear weapon. That is a 400 kiloton nuclear bomb. The former common room where all the police, fire and ambulance had their tea and coffee is a tribute to the service of the Royal Observer Corps, the ROC. The nuclear fallout display panels on the wall are used to plot radioactive fallout. The large red sloping plotting table would have been used to plot the exact position of nuclear explosions. That's this one here. Information plotted on these displays would have been transmitted directly from ROC headquarters to the scientists' room on the basement level. The ROC's role in warning the UK of an attack, both during World War II and the Cold War, is reflected in the exhibits.
July 1991, the host had receded. Coupled with future possible improvements in warning and monitoring technology, the government decided to dispense with the services of the Royal Observer Corps after 66 years of voluntary service.
Idea on the scale of the bunker. This is the main hallway and Chris is walking down one half of it. We've just come from the canteen area and there's all that lot down there as well. It's huge. Nominal bomb distance is half a mile from this. In this room we're actually charting the history of radar from the Second World War right the way up to almost modern day. The term radar stands for radio angle, direction and range. By transmitting a radio signal, or radar pulse, in a known direction and measuring the time taken for the signal to bounce off the target and return to the radar receiver, the radar operator can determine the direction and the distance and height of a target. In this display, the equipment was used for the development and testing of radar systems from the 1950s through to the present day.
Type C was introduced in 1973 and in due course replaced the Type B weapon. The first WE-177...
Before the bunker was a regional government headquarters, it used to be a radar station, and this is actually the radar room. Sorry about the poor lighting, but obviously they would keep lighting very minimal in here. We're now in the decontamination room. This is where they would come to remove their suits and get decontaminated. If they needed to go out the bunker after a nuclear explosion, they needed to wear this special suit to protect themselves against radioactive fallout. On their return, they would remove the contaminated suit, place it in the concrete bin, and then shower to remove any further fallout. They would be checked with a Geiger counter meter before getting dressed. So we've come down the stairs into the sheltered area below ground, and we're in what's called the military communications room, where staff would have used all this equipment to talk to personnel outside the bunker. Morse code was used because it travels long distances, and in this case a message is being transmitted. I used to know Morse code and used to be able to tell what this message meant, but I've forgotten it now. But can you work out what it is? I'll leave the answer in the description below. I'll leave the video running so you can hear the entire message. And I'll even give you the A to Z of the Morse code so you get to help you work it out. So in here is what a typical fallout shelter would look like. There'd be a few supplies and tables and chairs, and I believe this would only be used during the attack and not during the after period. Forgive the loudness of the music, but this is some of the Russian uniforms and memorabilia in the bunker. But of interest for the kids, I mentioned a spy mouse earlier. There he is. Of course, it wouldn't be complete without a master spy rat now, would it? Another level, of course, there's a similar corridor of rooms. So this room houses all the life support equipment. There's air handling units used to move air around the 30,000 square feet of the complex. To your left are massive air cooling units. And to the right is switchgear and controls of all the equipment. It's duplicated to provide for the failure of any of the main systems. And this is the secondary backup system. Would imagine it would be quite noisy down here with all the old fans and what have you going on.
So this is the cipher office where the most important secret messages were sent and received. You'd have to be really special to an important person to be in here. The operators use special equipment that scrambles up the messages, and then they are unscrambled by other equipment by the person receiving the message. This stops people listening in to the super secret conversations.
This room originally housed the Regional Commissioner's Secretariat. You can now see the equipment used to warn military and civil authorities in the public of an imminent nuclear attack. Warning of the attack would be sent via the warning broadcast network to over 5,000 warning receivers. This equipment would also activate 7,000 public warning sirens.
We'd have 4 minutes before the bomb arrived, apparently.
Now in the most central point at the basement level, this is the Commissioner's room, one of only 2 people to have their own beds, the other being the Principal Officer, whose bedroom you can see off this room. The Commissioner was appointed civil servant or minister who had the executive powers of government. He assisted by his principal officer, deputy secretary and assistant secretary, who with the secretariat of 7 would form a cabinet of any post-war government.
Oh, and he tells everyone what to do and organises what's going to happen in an emergency. Right, come on everyone, we've got to listen up now because this is the briefing room where the heads of departments, scientists and the commissioner would discuss and decide what to do next. Part of the briefing here would be to work out how to get the food and the supplies to survivors, what communications were interrupted and how to rebuild roads and so much more.
We're actually now in the engineers operating the equipment for wartime broadcasting. In other words, the BBC would operate from here. They would also handle any press or publicity requirements in the time before the war broke out.
This is where the BBC studio, where the staff from local radio stations would send out radio broadcasts to everybody outside. In a national emergency, the radio would play a mixture of news, information and preparation items, and the bunker could broadcast to the whole defence region after an attack.
And the spy mice could send their own messages as well.
This is the ground floor or basement. Choose a room with the smallest amount of outside wall. The farther you are from outside walls of the room, the better the protection.
Well, that water tank's a bit bigger than on the boat, isn't it? That one holds enough water for all the people in the bunker for 3 months. That's 15,000 litres of water. People at home would have to save 16 litres of water per person for their shelter.
This is the communications room where all messages in and out of the bunker would have been received or sent from the COM, or communication centre. This room was where the communications clerk would receive and send dispatches, presumably for civil matters and not military, because I doubt they would be coded. During the war, the regional government headquarters had their own communications, and this covered the whole country, and you can see how it was connected on the display boards around us. The Emergency Communications Network, ECN, was protected from attack, and all the various messages would appear on the VDUs. The messages would then be printed out on printers, pretty much as we do today.
This must be the telephone exchange. It's where the super important telephone lines come in and out of the bunker, and they still do today apparently.
For Regional Government Headquarters, Station Tadma 2. Test message begins. Access Quebec QA2.
This is the internal exchange that I would have used to make calls within the bunker. Very World War II looking, isn't it? So this is a form of wartime internet. This equipment would have been used to contact other equipment in other wartime bunkers. There's a portable satellite communications equipment if they need to talk to someone important on the go outside.
This is the sit-rep room, apparently, where scientists would have worked in this room plotting the fallout and working on what's happening outside.
This system is what's called BMEWS, B-M-E-W-S. It's short for Ballistic Missile Early Warning System. They could spot incoming nuclear missiles from other countries and aiming at the UK. From this room is where they would have directed all the emergency services. Obviously there'd be a lot of fires and casualties, so they would have used this room to coordinate any emergency services to help and put fires out. The way they also now cater for the kids. So believe it or not, this is the female dormitory where the female staff would have resided.
15 ladies.
15 of them to be exact. They would use a hotbed rotational system where the night staff would be working, the day staff would sleep. And then the day staff would go into work and the night staff would take over the same beds. The mummy decided she'd try to see how comfortable they are.
Roger's going on his own. You coming with me?
I love the sound.
Sounds like
This is the medical room or sick bay.
Yeah, because they couldn't get to hospital, could they?
There's no way of going to hospital, so they would have had to
dealt
with everything
here.
in here.
They could cope with most minor illnesses and operations, though.
Yeah. That's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed our little tour of the not so secret bunker. But before we leave, here's a couple of questions. If the bunker is just a museum, why is there an even lower third floor off limits to the general public? And why next to the bunker is a brand new modern looking building also off limits to the general public? And why would the museum need an ultra modern communications mast? Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Is the museum a cover hiding something else? Or is the bunker still in operation?